My name is Emily Carter. I'm 28. Last Tuesday at 2:47 p.m., I stood on the weathered deck of my uncle's beach house watching my mother measure the windows for new curtains, while my father calculated property taxes on his phone. And when I asked why they were acting like they owned the place, my mother turned to me with a smile that could freeze the Atlantic and said, "We do own it, sweetheart. The deed transferred to us 3 weeks ago. You have until Friday to clear out your things." The wind off the Rhode Island coast was brutal that afternoon, 41 degrees with gusts that rattled the old storm shutters Uncle Daniel had installed himself 20 years ago. I could taste salt on my lips. My hands went numb, but not from the cold. "What are you talking about?" I heard my voice crack. Uncle Daniel left the house to me. I was at the will reading. My father didn't look up from his phone. The will was invalid. Daniel wasn't in his right mind when he wrote it. We had it contested. The court agreed. He was perfectly clear. He had all his faculties right until… Emily. My mother's voice cut through the wind like scissors through silk. "Don't make this ugly. We're trying to be gracious about this. You can take your personal items. The furniture stays. We already have buyers interested." She gestured toward the ocean-facing windows, her interior designer instincts already transforming the space. "This view will photograph beautifully. We're thinking $1.8 million listing price, maybe higher if we stage it right." Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. I looked at my father. He was 61, silver-haired, the kind of man who wore pressed khakis to the beach. "Dad, you know this isn't right. Uncle Daniel built this house with his own hands. He wanted me to have it." "What your uncle wanted," my father said, finally meeting my eyes, "and what was legal are two different things." The man was 73, on heavy medication, grieving his wife. He wasn't competent to make estate decisions. He was competent enough to run his architecture firm until 6 months before he died. "Emily." My mother stepped closer. She smelled like expensive perfume and fresh paint samples. "You're embarrassing yourself. Daniel felt guilty about something that happened years ago and he made an emotional decision. We're his actual family. We're correcting his mistake." Something about the way she said actual family made my stomach clench, as if 28 years of being their daughter counted for nothing, as if Uncle Daniel hadn't been family too. "I'm calling his lawyer," I said. My mother's laugh was light, musical. "Robert Chen?" "Darling, Robert was the one who helped us file the deed transfer. He agreed Daniel had been under undue influence, yours specifically." The deck seemed to tilt under my feet. "That's insane. I never—" "You visited him 3 times a week during his illness," my father interrupted. "You had access to his accounts, his documents, his medication schedule. The pattern is clear. I visited him because he was dying and alone, because you two were too busy—" "Careful," my mother's voice dropped 20 degrees. "We have documentation of your visits. We have witness statements about your unusual interest in his finances. If you fight this, Emily, it won't end well for you." She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was the beach house listing, already live on 3 real estate websites. Coastal Paradise, historic architect's dream home, $1.85 million. Posted 4 hours ago. They'd listed it before they even told me. Let me take you back 6 years to understand why this moment felt like my lungs had forgotten how to work. I was 22, still in my second year of graduate school for archival science, and Uncle Daniel had called me at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. "Emmy Bean," he'd said. That was his name for me since I was 4, when I'd tried to plant lima beans in his garden and insisted they'd grow into beanstalks. "I need to show you something." He'd driven 3 hours to pick me up, wouldn't tell me where we were going. We ended up at this house, this exact beach house, at sunrise. The property was raw land then, just a bluff overlooking the water and beach roses growing wild. "I'm building something here," he'd said. "Somewhere the family can gather. somewhere with roots. We sat on the rocky shore drinking coffee from a thermos. The ocean was mercury-colored, smooth as glass. He'd pointed to where the house would stand, describing every detail: the wraparound deck, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the reading nook with built-in shelves. "When I'm gone," he'd said quietly, "this goes to you. Not your parents. You." "Uncle Daniel, let me finish." He'd squeezed my hand. His palms were rough from years of drafting by hand before computers took over. "Your mother is my sister, and I love her, but she sees everything as an asset. Your father sees everything as a transaction. You see things as stories. You preserve things. That's why you'll understand what this place means." He'd pulled out a folded piece of paper, made me read it right there. It was a handwritten promise, dated and signed. "I, Daniel Marcus Shaw, being of sound mind, leave my beach house property at 47 Shore Lane, Rhode Island, to my niece Emily Rose Carter, with the request that she fill it with better memories than I had time to make. Keep this somewhere safe," he told me, "just in case." I'd laughed. "In case what? You're healthy. You're only 67. In case your mother finds out." Now, standing on that deck 6 years later with my parents dismantling his legacy, I understood what he'd meant. My mother had always been jealous of Uncle Daniel. He'd been the successful one, the creative one, the one who'd built something beautiful while she'd spent her career decorating other people's homes. And my father had always valued net worth over everything else, had always treated family dinners like portfolio reviews. "Friday at 3 p.m., my mother said, checking her watch. "We're showing the property to serious buyers. Be gone by then." She walked back inside, already on the phone with her staging company. My father followed, leaving me alone on the deck, with the sound of wind and water, and my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. I worked at the Providence City Archives, a job that paid $43,000 a year and required a master's degree. I lived in a studio apartment that cost $1,200 a month. My savings account had $8,947.22 in it. I had student loans, a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and a collection of vintage photographs I'd been restoring for 3 years. I didn't have lawyer money. I didn't have fight-your-own-parents-in-court money. I didn't even have last month security deposit for a new apartment money if they succeeded in evicting me from the studio I'd been subletting. But I had Uncle Daniel's note. I had the memory of his rough hands and his terrible coffee and his promise. I had 6 years of visiting him every Wednesday after work, of listening to his stories about building this house beam by beam, of learning why he'd used cedar shingles instead of vinyl, why he'd oriented the deck exactly 47 degrees southeast to catch both sunrise and sunset. I pulled out my phone and called Robert Chen's office. The receptionist told me he was unavailable. I asked when he'd be available. She said he'd declined to take my calls. That's when I knew my parents hadn't just contested the will. They'd burned every bridge I might have used to fight back. I drove back to Providence in silence. The highway stretched gray and endless. I kept replaying my mother's words. "We're correcting his mistake." As if I was the mistake. As if 28 years of being their daughter had been leading up to this moment where they chose a $1.5 million asset over me. The studio apartment felt smaller than usual when I got home. I sat on my bed, which was also my couch, which was also my dining area, and pulled out the box I kept under the sink. Inside were Uncle Daniel's letters, every single one he'd written me since I was 12. 47 letters total, each one on his personal stationery with his architecture firm's letterhead. I read through them chronologically, looking for anything that might help. Most were mundane: updates about his projects, questions about my studies, observations about birds he'd seen on the beach. But one from 3 years ago stopped me cold. "Emmy Bean, if you're reading these carefully someday, it means something's happened, and you're looking for answers. Check with Maxwell and Associates. Attention James Maxwell. He'll know what to do. Don't tell your parents. They can't know about the trust. Trust? He'd mentioned a trust. I'd forgotten about it. The letter had arrived during finals week of my last semester. I'd read it quickly, filed it away, never followed up. Uncle Daniel had still been healthy then. The trust had seemed like paranoid future planning. Now it felt like a life raft. I looked up Maxwell and Associates, law firm in Newport, specialized in estate planning and trusts. I called the next morning at exactly 9:01 a.m., as soon as they opened. I'm trying to reach James Maxwell, I told the receptionist. My Uncle Daniel Shaw was his client. Silence. Then, please hold. 3 minutes passed. Then a man's voice. Older, careful. Ms. Carter? Yes, I'm Emily Carter, Daniel Shaw's niece. I've been waiting for your call, he said. How long do we have? My parents are showing the property Friday at 3 p.m. They've already listed it. That gives us 4 days. Don't do anything. Don't contact your parents. Don't contact Robert Chen. Can you come to my office tomorrow at noon? Yes. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. And Ms. Carter? Bring any documentation you have. Everything. He hung up before I could ask questions. I went to work on autopilot Wednesday morning. The archive was quiet, temperature controlled at exactly 68 degrees year-round to preserve the documents. I spent my shift cataloging a collection of letters from the 1890s, wearing white cotton gloves, using pH-neutral tissue paper to separate each page. My supervisor, Margaret, noticed I was distracted. You okay? Family stuff. She nodded. Margaret was 64, had worked at the archive for 30 years. She'd seen everything. The kind you can talk about, or the kind you need to handle alone? The second kind. Need time off? Maybe. I'll know more tomorrow. She squeezed my shoulder. Take what you need. The dead people can wait. It was meant to be comforting. It wasn't. At 2:15 p.m., my mother appeared at the archive entrance. She'd never visited me at work before. Didn't even know exactly where I worked, just that it was some dusty basement with old papers. She stood in the reading room wearing cream-colored wool and gold earrings, looking utterly out of place among the acid-free boxes and preservation equipment. Emily, she smiled at the reference librarian. I'm her mother. Family emergency. Margaret appeared from her office, her professional smile fixed in place. Can I help you? I need to speak with my daughter. It'll only take a moment. Our reading room requires silence, Margaret said. There's a lobby area. This is private. My mother's voice carried that edge I knew well, the edge that meant she'd get her way or make everyone uncomfortable trying. I stood up, stripping off my gloves. It's fine, Margaret. We walked to the small lobby by the entrance. My mother waited until the heavy door closed behind us. I tried calling, she said. You didn't answer. I was working. Robert Chen's office called me. They said you tried to contact them. Of course they had. Of course Robert Chen was reporting my movements to my parents. I was trying to understand the deed transfer, I said calmly. Trying to see the documentation. There's nothing to understand. The matter is settled. She adjusted her purse strap. But I'm here as a courtesy. If you're cooperative, we'll give you $15,000 for your trouble. A fresh start payment. $15,000. Out of $1.5 million. Out of my inheritance. That's generous of you, I heard myself say. My mother brightened. I'm glad you're being reasonable. Your father was worried you'd make this complicated. When would I get the payment? After closing. Probably 4 to 6 weeks. And if I say no? Her smile thinned. Then we proceed as planned. You get nothing, and we pursue legal action for the items you've already removed from the property. I haven't removed anything. That's not what our documentation says. She pulled out her phone, showed me photos. They were items from the beach house. Uncle Daniel's favorite armchair, his drafting table, a set of vintage sailing prints. All things I'd never touched, never taken. Those are still in the house, I said. Are they? Because we have dated photos showing them present 6 months ago and missing now. We have receipts showing their appraised value. If we file a police report, you're setting me up. I'm protecting our assets. She leaned closer. Her perfume was overwhelming in the small space. Emily, you've always been dramatic. Always needed to be the special one. Uncle Daniel fed into that, made you feel like you were more important than you were. But this is real life. This is money, real money. Take the $15,000 and walk away. Something hardened in my chest. Something that had been cracking for years finally broke clean through. I need to think about it, I said. You have until Friday morning, 9 a.m. After that, the offer expires. She left in a cloud of expensive perfume and implied threats. I stood in the lobby for 5 full minutes, breathing slowly, counting the tiles on the floor. 48 beige tiles, 12 cracked ones. Margaret found me there. Want to talk about it? Not yet. Want me to make tea and pretend we're talking about it? I almost laughed. Yes, please. We sat in her office with Earl Grey and digestive biscuits. I didn't tell her everything, but I told her enough. She listened without interrupting, the way archivists do. We're trained to let the story unfold at its own pace. Your parents are idiots, she said finally. You don't threaten an archivist with documentation fraud. We invented documentation. I don't have proof they're lying. Yet, she pulled out a legal pad. But you know how to build a paper trail. You know how to verify sources. You know how to spot forgeries. She tapped the pad with her pen. What do you have that they don't know you have? Uncle Daniel's letters, the handwritten promise, the name James Maxwell. Maybe enough, I said. Then go build your case. Take tomorrow off. Take Friday too if you need it. Thursday at noon, I walked into Maxwell and Associates. The office was in a converted Victorian in Newport, all dark wood and built-in bookshelves. James Maxwell was exactly what I'd pictured. Late 60s, wire-rimmed glasses, cardigan sweater. Ms. Carter. He shook my hand. His grip was firm. You look like your uncle. People say that. It's a compliment. Daniel was one of the good ones. He gestured to a chair. Tell me what's happened. I told him everything. The deed transfer, the undue influence claim, the $15,000 offer, the fake documentation of stolen property. He took notes in neat handwriting. When I finished, he opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. Cream-colored paper, Uncle Daniel's handwriting on the front. For Emily Rose Carter, open only in James Maxwell's presence. My hands shook as I took it. Before you open that, Maxwell said, you need to understand what your uncle did. 6 years ago, he came to me worried about your parents. He'd heard your mother talking about the beach house as her retirement plan. He'd seen your father calculating inheritance values. He knew they'd try something. So he created a trust? An irrevocable trust. The beach house and his investment portfolio were transferred into it 3 months before he died. He was evaluated by 3 different doctors, all of whom certified he was of sound mind. The trust names you as sole beneficiary. Your parents can't touch it. But they filed a deed transfer, a fraudulent one, based on a will that was superseded by the trust. Robert Chen either helped them forge documents or was lied to about the legal timeline. Either way, it's invalid. My heart was hammering. Why didn't you contact me sooner? Because Daniel asked me to wait. He said you'd call when you were ready. He said if I approached you first, you might try to reconcile with your parents, might doubt yourself. He wanted you to come looking for the truth on your own terms. I looked at the envelope in my hands. It was heavier than it should be. Open it, Maxwell said gently. Inside were documents, legal documents, stamped and notarized, property records, bank statements, and a letter, 3 pages in Uncle Daniel's careful architect's handwriting. I read it aloud because my eyes were blurring. Dear Emmy Bean, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And Sophia and Michael are already doing exactly what I knew they'd do. I'm sorry I couldn't stop this while I was alive. I tried to talk to your mother, tried to make her see that money isn't love and property isn't family. But she doesn't hear words. She only hears documents. Do you remember that morning on the bluff, when we watched the sunrise and drank terrible coffee from my thermos? You asked me why I was building the house so far from town. I told you it was because some things need distance to be seen clearly. I meant it then. I mean it now. The original trust deed is with James Maxwell. His office is at 47 Bellevue Avenue, Newport. The copies I've left you show the timeline. The trust was established April 12, 2019, 3 years before I died. Every asset was transferred legally, with medical certification of my competency. Inside this envelope, you'll also find the original handwritten promise I gave you on the bluff, copies of your mother's emails to me asking about my estate plans, a recording of a conversation where your father asked me to reconsider making emotional decisions, bank statements showing the investment portfolio, currently worth $340,000. Documentation of 3 separate medical evaluations confirming my mental capacity. A letter I wrote to the probate court to be opened only if someone contests the trust. Your mother will claim I was under your influence. The recordings prove otherwise. You visited me out of love. She visited me out of inventory. Don't show this to anyone except James until the right moment. Let them think they've won. Let them commit fully to their fraud. Then, when they can't back out, when they've told their lies to lawyers and courts and real estate agents, present the truth. You are not the dramatic one, Emmy Bean. You are not the difficult daughter. You are the one who showed up. You are the one who asked about my day, who learned the difference between cedar and pine, who understood why the deck faces southeast. You are the one who preserved what mattered. The beach house is yours. The portfolio is yours. The future you build is yours. I'm sorry I can't be there to see it, but I'll be there in every nail I drove, every board I sanded, every sunrise that lights up those windows. All my love, always, Uncle Daniel, also known as the guy who believed in beanstalks. I read it twice, then a third time. The document swam in front of me. Maxwell handed me a tissue. I hadn't realized I was crying. He recorded them? I managed. 3 conversations over 2 years. Your mother asking about his will, suggesting you were taking advantage of his loneliness. Your father offering to help manage his assets and warning him about fortune hunters in the family. Daniel was thorough. I looked at the papers spread across the desk. Property deed in my name, trust documents, medical evaluations dated and stamped, Uncle Daniel's handwriting on every page steady and clear. What do I do? I asked. Maxwell smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting 4 years to spring a very careful trap. Tomorrow at 3 p.m., your parents are showing the property to buyers, correct? Yes. Let them. Let them go through with the showing. Let them get the buyers excited. Let them talk price. Let them commit to the sale. I'll be there at 3:45 p.m. with the real documentation, in front of witnesses. They'll deny everything. Let them try. He gathered the documents into a folder. Daniel was an architect. He knew how to build things that last. This case is airtight. I left his office at 2:30 p.m. with copies of everything in my bag. I drove back to Providence, stopped at the archive, told Margaret I'd need Friday and possibly Monday off. Good hunting, she said. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept reading Uncle Daniel's letter, kept seeing his handwriting, hearing his voice in every word. He'd known. He'd known exactly what they'd do, and he'd prepared for it like he was drafting a building. Every support beam in place, every load-bearing wall calculated, every detail specified. Friday morning, my phone rang at 8:47 a.m. My mother. Have you made your decision? she asked. I need more time. You don't have more time. The offer expires in 13 minutes. I could hear my father in the background. Just tell her the money's off the table. Emily, my mother's voice softened artificially. I know this is hard. I know you felt close to Daniel, but he's gone, and life moves on. Take the money, start fresh. Don't make this a war. I don't want to fight, I said, and I meant it. I didn't want to fight. I wanted the truth to fight for me. Good. Then we'll have papers drawn up. You'll sign a release, we'll transfer the $15,000, and we can all move forward. I'll think about it. There's nothing to... She stopped herself. The showing is at 3 p.m. Don't be at the property. It'll be awkward for everyone. She hung up. I arrived at the beach house at 2:55 p.m. The driveway was already full. My parents' Mercedes, Robert Chen's BMW, and two other cars I didn't recognize. I parked on the street and walked up slowly. Through the windows, I could see people moving around. My mother was doing her designer performance, gesturing at the windows, probably talking about natural light and coastal charm. My father stood near the fireplace with a couple in their 50s, pointing at something on his phone. Robert Chen was by the door, looking uncomfortable. I walked in at exactly 3:03 p.m. The conversation stopped. Everyone turned. Emily. My mother's smile was brilliant and false. I thought we agreed you wouldn't be here. It's still my uncle's house, I said quietly. I wanted to say goodbye. She exchanged a look with my father. He stepped forward. These are the Hendersons, he said, gesturing to the couple. They're very interested in the property. Perhaps you could give us privacy for the showing? I'll stay out of the way. I walked to the deck, leaving the door open behind me. I could hear my mother launching back into her pitch, talking about the architect design details, the sunrise views, the investment potential. Built by Daniel Shaw himself, she was saying, a renowned architect, every detail custom. You won't find craftsmanship like this in new construction. Mrs. Henderson asked about the deed. Clear title, my father said smoothly. No encumbrances. We can close in 30 days if you're serious. What about the family? Mr. Henderson asked. The niece who just walked in? She's processing, my mother said. Daniel left everything to us. She's having trouble accepting it. I heard Robert Chen clear his throat. Actually, the situation is somewhat straightforward, my father interrupted. The will was contested and resolved. The property is ours free and clear. At 3:44 p.m., a car pulled into the driveway. James Maxwell emerged carrying a leather briefcase, followed by a woman in a business suit I didn't recognize. My mother's face went pale. James? Sophia. Michael. Maxwell walked in without waiting for invitation. I see you're showing the property. This is a private showing, my father said. You need to leave. I don't think so. This is Patricia Vance from the Rhode Island Attorney General's office, Fraud Division. We're here about the property you're attempting to sell. The room went silent. Even the ocean seemed to quiet. I don't know what Emily told you, my mother started, but Emily didn't tell me anything. Daniel Shaw did. 4 years ago. Maxwell opened his briefcase. On April 12, 2019, Daniel Shaw created an irrevocable trust, transferring this property and his investment portfolio into it. Emily Carter is named sole beneficiary. The trust was executed 3 years before his death, while he was in perfect health, with 3 independent medical evaluations confirming his mental capacity. That's impossible, my father said. Robert, tell them. Robert Chen looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I wasn't aware of any trust. The will you showed me was superseded by the trust, Maxwell said, which makes your deed transfer fraudulent. You filed documents claiming Daniel Shaw was incompetent and under undue influence. You dated those claims to a period when he was already deceased. That's forgery. We didn't forge anything, my mother snapped. Daniel was confused at the end. Everyone knows that. Emily manipulated him. Maxwell pulled out a small recording device. Would you like to hear what Daniel actually said about Emily? This is from a conversation dated June 3rd, 2020. You're both present. He pressed play. Uncle Daniel's voice filled the room, clear and strong. Sophia, I'm telling you for the last time. The trust is established. Emily gets the house. That's final. My mother's voice, sharp. You're letting her manipulate you. She only visits because she wants something. Uncle Daniel. She visits because she cares. You visit because you want to measure for curtains. My father's voice. Daniel, be reasonable. The property's worth $1.5 million. Emily doesn't need that. She has her whole life ahead of her. Uncle Daniel. Exactly. She has her whole life ahead of her. You have retirement accounts and property. She has student loans and dreams. The house goes to her. My mother. If you do this, don't expect us at your funeral. Silence on the recording. Then Uncle Daniel, quietly, I won't. Maxwell stopped the playback. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Daniel recorded 3 conversations total, Maxwell continued. Each one shows clear mental competency and clear awareness of your intentions. He also left a letter for the probate court, predicting this exact scenario. He handed documents to Robert Chen. Here's the trust deed. Here are the medical evaluations. Here's the property transfer, properly filed and notarized. And here's Emily Carter's employment records from Providence City Archives, showing she was working during every date you claimed she was unduly influencing Daniel. She has badge swipe records, logged hours, witness statements from her supervisor. Her alibi is airtight. I pulled out my own folder, handed it to Patricia Vance. These are photos my parents showed me, claiming I stole property from the house. These items are still here. I documented them 2 hours ago. They staged fake evidence of theft. Mrs. Henderson stepped back, looking at my parents like they were strangers. You were going to sell us a house you don't own? We own it, my mother insisted, but her voice cracked. Daniel was our family. We had every right. You had no rights, Maxwell said. You had greed. There's a difference. My father turned to me. For the first time, I saw something in his face that might have been shame, or maybe just fear. Emily, we can work this out. This is a family matter. We don't need lawyers. You brought lawyers, I said. You brought fraud. You brought witnesses to watch you sell my inheritance. This is exactly what Uncle Daniel predicted. He was bitter, my mother said desperately. He never forgave me for being more successful, for having a better career. He built this house with his own hands, I said. Each word came out calm, measured. I'd practiced this in my head 100 times. He specified every detail because he wanted it to last. He knew you'd see it as money. He knew you'd see me as competition. So he protected what mattered. He left evidence. He left recordings. He left the truth. I turned to the Hendersons. I'm sorry you were brought here under false pretenses. The house isn't for sale. It never was. Mr. Henderson nodded slowly. We appreciate your honesty. He looked at my parents. We don't appreciate being part of fraud. They left. Robert Chen left. Patricia Vance stayed, taking notes, asking my parents if they wanted to make a statement. My mother started crying. Real tears this time, not her usual performance. We're your parents, she said. How can you do this to us? You tried to steal my inheritance. You lied to lawyers. You accused me of theft. You threatened me at my workplace. How could you do this to me? My father slumped into Uncle Daniel's favorite chair. It was just sitting here. All this money. Just sitting here. We worked our whole lives. So did he, I said. So am I. Maxwell handed my mother a document. This is a relinquishment of all claims to the property. Sign it now in front of Ms. Vance, or we file criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft by deception. And if we sign? My father asked. You walk away, no charges, But there's a permanent restraining order. You don't contact Emily. You don't come to this property. You don't mention her in public. You don't mention this house. You move on with your lives and let her move on with hers. My mother looked at me. You'd really send us to prison? I'd really let you face consequences, I said. Uncle Daniel gave you a choice 4 years ago. You chose greed then. Choose differently now. She signed. Then my father. Patricia Vance notarized the documents and took copies for the state file. We'll need statements from both of you, she told my parents. Separately, my office will be in touch. They left without saying goodbye. My mother's Mercedes kicked up gravel as they sped away. I stood in the empty house with James Maxwell, listening to the ocean. How do you feel? He asked. Tired. That's normal. He handed me a keyring. These are yours now. The house, the portfolio, everything. Daniel set up automatic payments for property taxes and insurance. You don't need to worry about anything for at least a year. What about them? Will they be charged? That's up to the state, but probably not. First-time offense, they signed the relinquishment. No actual financial loss occurred. They'll likely get probation and fines. They're my parents, I said. I know. I don't know if I can forgive this. You don't have to decide now, or ever. He packed up his briefcase. Daniel's final instruction was this: tell Emmy Bean that love doesn't lock you out. Love builds you a house and makes sure no one can take it from you. After Maxwell left, I walked through every room. Uncle Daniel's drafting table in the corner study, still covered with his tools. The built-in bookshelves he'd installed, designed to hold exactly 400 books. The kitchen window angled to catch morning light. The deck where we'd shared terrible coffee and talked about beanstalks. I sat on the steps leading down to the beach and watched the sun move west. It was 5:47 p.m. The tide was coming in. The air smelled like salt and beach roses. My phone buzzed. Margaret. How'd it go? Me. I'll tell you Monday. Margaret. That good or that bad? Me. Yes. 3 weeks later, I submitted my resignation at the archive. Margaret wasn't surprised. What will you do? She asked. Fix up the house. Maybe rent it out during summer. Maybe just live in it. I hesitated. Maybe start my own preservation consulting business. Historic homes, that kind of thing. Daniel would like that. Yeah, he would. I moved into the beach house on a Tuesday. My entire studio apartment fit into the living room with space left over. I set up Uncle Daniel's drafting table as my desk, hung his architectural drawings on the walls, planted beach roses along the deck like he'd always planned. My parents didn't contact me. I heard through my aunt that they'd sold their interior design business and moved to Florida. I heard they told people they were retiring early, never mentioned Rhode Island or beach houses or daughters who'd betrayed them. I didn't correct the story. Let them have their version. I had mine. 6 months later, on a cold morning in March, I visited Uncle Daniel's grave. The cemetery was on a hill overlooking the water, rows of headstones gray against gray sky. His was simple granite, just his name and dates and the phrase, "He built things that last." I left beach roses on the grave, the same wild kind that grew around the house. Thank you, I said out loud. For everything, for the house, for the trust, for knowing they'd do exactly what they did and protecting me anyway. The wind carried my words toward the ocean. I like to think he heard them. If you're watching this and you've ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-preservation, type, "I chose me" in the comments. Or if you stayed and fought for boundaries within your family, type, "I stayed and fought." Both are brave. Both matter. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories, just like this one. Thank you for being here. 1 year later, I was running my preservation consulting business from the beach house. I had 3 employees, 12 active clients, and a waiting list. I'd restored Uncle Daniel's drafting table and used it for presentations. I'd turned the reading nook into a small archive for local historical documents. The investment portfolio had grown to $380,000. I used some of it to fund scholarships for archival science students. Uncle Daniel would have liked that. I never spoke to my parents again. My aunt tried to broker peace twice. I politely declined. Some betrayals don't heal. Some distances are necessary. But I learned something Uncle Daniel tried to teach me that morning on the bluff. Some things need distance to be seen clearly. From far enough away, I could see that my parents had always valued assets over people, always treated love like a transaction. I could see that I'd spent 28 years trying to earn something they'd never valued giving. I could see that Uncle Daniel had given me something better than an inheritance. He'd given me proof that I was worth protecting. He'd given me evidence that love builds carefully, plans ahead, leaves instructions. He'd given me a house on a bluff where the deck faces southeast to catch both sunrise and sunset, where beach roses grow wild, where every nail and board and window represents someone who believed I deserved beautiful things. I stand on that deck now, watching the water turn silver in late afternoon light. The house has good bones. The foundation is solid, the structure will last, just like Uncle Daniel planned.